There is something no one warned you about. After all those years of noise, of children calling your name from every room, of a house that never seemed to empty, of calendars so full you couldn't find yourself in them. One day, it all grows quiet, and that quiet terrifies you. Maybe it already has. Maybe you've sat in a room that used to be loud and felt something you couldn't quite name. Not sadness, exactly. Not grief. Something older than that. Something that sits in the chest and waits. My grandmother called it the hollow hour. The moment when a woman realizes she has spent so many years filling silence that she no longer knows what lives inside it. I'm going to tell you what lives inside it. But first, stay with me, because what I'm about to share took me 73 years to understand. And the women in my tradition believe it may be the most important thing a woman learns in this season of her life. In my community, we do not call this time of life old age. We call it the season of the cedar. The cedar tree does not grow quickly. It does not bloom in spring to impress anyone. It grows in all weather, in silence, in stone. And by the time it reaches its full height, it has become the tree that shelters everything beneath it. Its roots go so deep that neither wind nor drought can move it. You are that tree. But no one told you that the deepest roots form in solitude. So let me share with you 5 truths. Truths that the women of my lineage have passed down beside fires, in whispers and in stories, for more generations than any of us can count. Truth 1. Loneliness and solitude are not the same river. The first thing I want you to understand is this. Loneliness and solitude wear the same face, but they are not the same. Loneliness is what happens when you're with yourself and wish you were somewhere else. It is the ache of absence. It is the clock on the wall that ticks too loudly. It is reaching for your phone not because anyone has called, but because the silence feels like it is accusing you of something. Solitude is different. Solitude is what happens when you're with yourself, and you're enough. It is not the absence of people. It is the presence of you. My great-aunt, a woman named Sings Quietly, lived alone for the last 20 years of her life after her husband passed, and her children moved to the cities. People from the outside would visit her and leave saying, "That poor woman, all alone out there." But when I visited her as a young girl, she was the least lonely person I had ever met. Her days were full, not with people, but with attention. She paid attention to the morning the way most people never pay attention to anything. She knew which birds arrived first in the spring. She knew the exact week the wild plums would ripen. She had conversations with the river. I asked her once if she was ever lonely. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Only when I forget who I am." That is the first truth. You are not lonely because you are alone. You are lonely when you forget who you are outside of everyone else's needs. And many women your age, women who have given 40, 50, 60 years of themselves to others, arrive at this quiet season and realize with a shock that they do not know who that person is. They never had the time to find out. This is not a tragedy. This is an invitation. The quiet is not punishing you. The quiet is asking, now that no one needs anything from you in this moment, what do you need? What do you love? What makes you feel alive when no one is watching? Those questions are not easy, but they are the most important questions of this season. Truth 2. The women who feared silence the most had the most to discover. In it, I want to tell you about a woman named Running Deer. She was 67 years old when her last child married and left home. For 40 years, she'd been a mother above all else. She was extraordinary at it. Her children were fed, loved, guided, and protected. But when the last one drove away, she stood in her kitchen and felt the floor shift beneath her. Not metaphorically, she said her actual legs buckled. Because for the first time in 4 decades, no one needed her to be strong for them. And she did not know what to do with her own strength. For the first year, she filled every hour. She volunteered. She visited neighbors. She called her children daily. She kept the television on from morning until night. Not because she was watching it, but because she couldn't bear the sound of a quiet house. The silence felt like failure. It felt like proof that her life was over. And then one winter, a great snowstorm came and kept her inside for 4 days. No neighbors, no errands, no noise she could manufacture to avoid herself. On the 3rd day, she told me later, something broke open inside her. Not in a painful way, more like a window that had been painted shut for years finally giving way. She started to remember things, who she had been before marriage, the girl who used to draw, the young woman who used to sing while she walked. the dreams she had quietly tucked away because there was always something more urgent. She picked up a pencil on that third day and drew something for the first time in 40 years. It was not a masterpiece. It did not need to be. It was simply hers. She told me. The silence did not take anything from me. It gave me back what I had forgotten I'd lost. This is the second truth. The silence you're afraid of is not your enemy. It is the place where you have been waiting for yourself. Truth. 3. This season was always meant to be yours. In many of our traditions, a woman's life moves through distinct seasons, and each one has a purpose. The spring of girlhood, the summer of raising and building, the autumn of harvest and transition, and then the winter, which the outside world sees only as a time of dying, of bare branches, of cold. But we know what the outside world does not. Nothing does its deepest growing in winter. The roots push further into the earth. The seeds that will bloom in spring are resting, gathering strength, preparing themselves. Winter is not the end of the story. Winter is where the story goes deep. For most of your life, you have been visible in the way the world values. Productive, needed, busy, giving. The world rewarded you for that visibility, and it was real and good and worthy. But this season, this quieter, slower, inward season, is not a lesser version of what came before. It is a different kind of fullness. A woman who has lived long and paid attention carries something rare inside her. She has seen enough to know what matters. She has survived enough to know what she is made of. She has loved enough to know the difference between love that nourishes and love that depletes. That knowledge is not nothing. That knowledge is everything. The tragedy would not be growing old alone. The tragedy would be growing old with all that wisdom and never turning it toward yourself. Never asking, what do I know now that I wish I had known at 30? What would I tell her? That younger version of me if I could. Because here is what I have seen in women who make peace with this season. They become luminous. Not in spite of their solitude. Because of it. They stop performing. They stop apologizing for taking up space. They start speaking the truth they have been softening for decades. They start laughing more freely, crying more freely, choosing more freely. They become, finally, entirely themselves. Truth 4. Tending to yourself is not selfishness. It is medicine. There is a belief that many women of your generation were raised with. A belief so deep it lives below thought, below words. The belief that putting yourself first is a kind of moral failing. That your value comes from what you give, not from who you are. That rest is laziness. That pleasure must be earned. That your needs come last. I understand where that belief came from. In many of our histories, women had to be selfless to survive. The family could not afford for the mother to be weak. So she taught herself not to need. And she passed that teaching down to her daughters, and they to theirs. But I want to say something clearly. That teaching was a survival strategy. Not a spiritual law. You survived. You more than survived. You built something. You gave something. You held things together that would have fallen without you. That is real, and it is honored. And now there is a different kind of work to do. The work of tending to yourself with the same devotion you gave to everyone else. I had an elder in our community, a woman who lived to be 91, and in her last years she developed the most beautiful daily practice. Every morning before she spoke to anyone, before she looked at anything that needed to be done, she would go outside and stand in whatever weather the day had brought, and she would breathe, just breathe, for as long as it took until she could feel her own heartbeat. She said she was checking in with herself, making sure she was still there. She told me, all my life I woke up and immediately thought of everyone else, what they needed, what I had to do. I had to learn late to think of myself first. Not because I mattered more than them, but because if I didn't tend to myself, I would have nothing real left to give. Tending to yourself might look like rest without guilt. It might look like saying no to things that drain you. It might look like sitting in the sun for an hour doing nothing at all. It might look like finally pursuing the thing you said you would do someday. Because someday is here. It has arrived. This is not selfishness. This is the deepest kind of wisdom. Truth 5. The most powerful connections come after you stop being lonely for the wrong reasons. Here is something the young do not understand yet. There is a kind of loneliness that no amount of company can cure. I have seen women surrounded by grandchildren, invited to every gathering, never eating a meal alone, and still carrying that hollow ache. Because they were looking to other people to tell them they were enough. They needed the noise of others to drown out the silence inside themselves. And I have seen women who lived simply, quietly, with long stretches of solitude, and who were among the most deeply connected people I've ever known. Connected to the land, connected to memory, connected to the older women before them and the younger ones coming after, connected to something larger than any single life. The difference was not how many people surrounded them. The difference was whether they had made peace with themselves. When you stop needing other people to save you from your own silence, something remarkable happens. You begin to choose company differently. You choose people who add to what is already full, rather than filling what is empty. You stop clinging. You stop performing. You show up as you actually are. And the connections that form from that place are unlike anything formed from loneliness or obligation. My grandmother used to say, "When you know how to be alone well, you know how to be together well." I have watched that be true my entire life. And now, a final word. Before I go, I want to leave you with this. You have spent most of your life being needed. And that was good. That mattered. But you are entering, or perhaps you are already in, a season that asks something different of you. Not giving outward, but going inward. Not filling silence, but learning to hear what it contains. The hollow hour is not the end. It is the entrance. Every woman I have known who made it through that entrance, who stopped running from the quiet and sat down inside it, came out the other side changed, softer in the ways that matter, stronger in the ways that last, more honest, more at peace, more themselves than they had been in decades. You are not too old for that. You are exactly the right age. The fire is burned down to coals, and coals hold heat longer than flame. That is what you are now, not the flash of the fire, the deep, enduring warmth that keeps everything around it from going cold. Sit with yourself, tend to yourself, listen to what the silence is trying to teach you. It has been waiting a long time to speak. If these words found something true in you, carry them into tomorrow. And if there is someone in your life who needs to hear this, a sister, a mother, a friend, pass it on. That is how wisdom has always traveled, not in books, in hands.